So never give up, give up. I mean, I've heard so many things. People even directly telling me, or my parent. I remember going to high school, somebody told my parent that, oh, somebody who has a disability, why would you like to invest in him? Why you don't invest in your other kids, your four other kids who do not have disabilities? But my parents believed in me. So I thought they need to believe in myself too. So it's all about believing in yourself and don't give up, you know listen to only the good voices, not the bad ones, I should say. Thank you.
You're listening to the Global Inclusion and Practice podcast, sharing the stories of DEI changemakers around the world. Vivian Aqua and Marjolein Vlug bring you behind-the-scenes stories and kitchen table conversations about the personal perspectives of DEI professionals, representatives, advocates, and allies, talking about what matters in this work and what sustains us in creating lasting change. There are many of us working on creating a more inclusive world. Let's share our stories. We're in this together.
Welcome, Edmund Asiedu, to the Global Inclusion in Practice podcast. We are truly excited to have you as our guest. And can you introduce yourself to our listeners? Who are you at this moment in time, professionally and personally?
Yes, thanks, Vivian. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you. I really appreciate the work that you do, trying your best to make sure that there is real inclusion, and diversity around the world. I think it's something that we need to see more in other countries. So thanks for bringing me here. My name is Edmund Asiedu, as Vivian had mentioned. I go by pronouns he, him, his. I'm a Black man originally from Ghana in the western part of Africa. I live in the United States right now. I have been working as a transportation professional. I mean, accessible transportation professional for the past 3 years, a little over 3 years. And my background has been all over. I've been in career development before. I've been in an educational setting before, and the reason is really one. I'm very much interested in the overall independent living of individuals with disabilities. So, in developing my career, I decided to have a taste of all the parts that can contribute to the independent living of individuals with disabilities. So I've been in educational setting because education is a very good tool that individuals with disabilities really need in order to secure the second, aspect of it, which is employment. And so being a career development before, I've learned a lot about like resources and all that, the tools that individuals with disabilities, especially if you're living in the United States, and some of them may be applicable in any other country that you may find yourself in. And then also transportation. So we know very well that most individuals with disabilities are not able to drive by themselves. A few of us drive with the help of technology. And so, I entered into the transportation sector just to learn more about, what are some of the things that can be done by transportation agencies in order to make their systems more accessible to individuals with disability. And then the last part, which is my next target, if I get the chance, I may go and work in that sector as well, which is housing, public housing. Because a lot of buildings that we see, not only here in America, but also globally, they are not accessible, at all. If you're using a wheelchair, probably you will need somebody to carry you to get to a whole lot of places because they don't have elevators or escalators. Things that can help you really get into these buildings are not available. So that is what I've been doing over the years in a nutshell. But to crown it all, I'm very much interested in disability inclusion at the workplace, anywhere else that you can think about. And that is why I said yes to this conversation, because it is something that I fight for, and it doesn't only help a group of people, it's also helped me as well. And so I'm happy to be here today and looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Well,
Thank
we're
you
very
for
happy to
sharing
have you.
that.
Yeah.
because what you were sharing about the challenges that people face with a disability. I'm currently dealing with a temporary disability, so ever since breaking my ankle, I know partially what you're talking about, but I'm baffled by environments where you would think they would be modern, where you would think they would be more inclusive, they were actually excluding me. So not only the buildings, but also people, right? The moment that you sit in a wheelchair, you're perceived differently. So I'm glad and happy and excited that you said yes. We put your name together with Marjolein. We were thinking about who we would like to interview for season 2, and you were number one because it's also for us raising awareness about disability inclusion, but also for us to a beautiful gateway to learn more about you and what you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, very happy to hear more about your perspective and your experiences. What is an essential thing that you would really like for our listeners to know and maybe even remember about you at this from the start of this conversation forward?
Yeah. So about me, one thing that I have, I would say that people should learn about me as an individual with a mobility disability. I mean, I use a wheelchair. I use a pair of crutches, the elbow crutches. They start from elbow. I'm sure we all know that. I also have a leg brace. So my story is that a little bit of my story, my disability story, is that I am a survivor of poliomyelitis. So I contracted the polio virus way back about 42 years ago in Ghana, after I had you know, like a serious fall in a gutter. I mean, probably Vivian will know how we have open gutters in Ghana where, anything can happen, especially for a child. And I fell off from the back of my cousin, who was older than me, was trying to send me to my mom at the village market. And I ended up, she didn't cross the gutter at the right place. And so she decided to, cross the place where there was no cover. And I fell right from her back and landed in the gutter. And folks came, they were able to get me out. That's how it all started because I had not received the vaccine at that time. And even the vaccine at that time was not that strong. People who received it even still contracted the polio virus. So that is how my story started. And this has resulted in those of you who know more about polio. Polio, how it works is that once it attacks the part of your body, that part stops growing. Not entirely, but it goes very slow at a slower pace because there is no regular flow of blood in that area, especially the polio, virus likes to stay in the bone marrow. So like it just eat everything that is in there. So that is my my background in terms of where I had my disability from. But there is one thing that I want people to really, and it's not going to be about my disability. I think it's going to be about my attitude of never giving up. So it's been a long journey, even being able to receive an elementary school education from my village, back in Ghana was really a struggle. I remember and I saw it, my mom, carrying me to class because I didn't have pair of crutches. I didn't have a wheelchair at that time. So my mom literally would carry me to the nearby school and then come and take me, send me back home. So it's like growing up and seeing and hearing about all these stories, I put everything together and decided never to stop. So, I graduated from junior high school, had good grades, thank goodness. I continued to a high school. My parents really believed in, even though they didn't have anything. They were peasant farmers, but they decided to invest in me. So graduating from high school, I got good grades. I was like St. Mary's Boys Secondary School in Takoradi. Probably you didn't know that. But I graduated from there. I had good grades, but there was no money to go back to school, so I had to come up with a plan. Sorry, I became a people teacher. Ghanaians who will be listening to us will know what people teacher is all about. I was started teaching elementary school kids it was really challenging. And I was able to save some money for 2 years. I started studying at the Ghana Institute of Journalism because I wanted to be an investigative journalist. I was able to finish that school. You know, paying for school was really challenging. I was literally banging on the doors of, policymakers, lawmakers, parliamentarians, because I had seen that they were being given some money for their constituents. And I was able to get money from them with little support from my grandmother and my parent. I was able to graduate from there, and from nowhere. In the course of that time, I won a few scholarships, especially from Denmark. I've been in that area before. I was in Denmark for like almost 6 months on the ticket of DANIDA, Danish International Development Agency. And I volunteered with the World Bank in Liberia to support a lot of young folks who were ready to go into social entrepreneurship and all that. I decided to tell this story because if you look at the beginning of my story, where I'm coming from, where I was able to get to, it's all because I never looked down upon myself. I told myself that there is nothing that would stop me in spite of my disability. I will make it to the last end of it, and I'm still in that journey, trying to get to wherever I want to go. So never give up. Give up. I've heard so many things. People even directly telling me, or my parent. I remember going to high school. Somebody told my parent that, oh, somebody who has a disability, why would you like to invest in him? Why you don't invest in your other kids, your four other kids who do not have disabilities? But my parents believed in me, so I thought they need to believe in myself too. So it's all about believing in yourself and don't give up. You know, Listen to only the good voices, not the bad ones. I should say. Thank you.
That's a good one too. And the good voices in yourself as well as outside.
Correct. Correct.
Hi, I'm Vivian Aqua, the certified DEI consultant, and I would like to invite you to take your organization to the next level of understanding by collaborating with me. I specialize in helping organizations amplify their DEI initiatives and foster an inclusive environment. Reach out today to learn how I can help your organization unleash its hidden potential and create a culture of belonging. What's it like for you to do DEI work, right? I listening to your story, I understand why you pose the way you do because you have an educational background. You decided to raise awareness about disability inclusion on another level because the way you write and the way you talk about things, it's different. You're using a lot of images where I'm just like, okay, but where does he source this? And now talking to you, I totally understand. Maybe there's more, but I understand where it's coming. So what's it like for you to do the DEI work?
Yeah. So first of all, I am one of those proponents who believe that it doesn't have to be DEI, right? I believe that it has to be DEIA. So basically, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, including people with disabilities. And the reason is very simple because of how disability intersects with all the things that we are struggling with: gender, race, age, like all those things that we are struggling with. Disability intersect with all of them. Therefore, if we include accessibility to the work of DEI, we will be able to probably achieve most of the goals that we'll be setting in our, workplaces, wherever we are doing this work. We'll be able to, whether in government, wherever, we'll be able to achieve that more probably quickly than what we are currently doing. So, you know, that is the first thing that I want to put out there. The other thing that I also want to add to this is the fact that, a lot of companies. So what they are doing is that, because some people are doing it because they think like, oh, D&I is the right thing to do, you know, without even looking at the purpose. I'm talking about why they want to get into like Vivian and I? Is it that they just want to put it on their website for people to see and say that, okay, this is the best place to work? No, you want to put DEIA. Let me stress that. The A, let me stress that. You want to add that to it and then come up with a policy that tells the whole world that you are committed to not only improving diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also you are interested in bringing individuals with disabilities, people who are neurodivergent, and all that. You may not even see their disability, or their disabilities, but are you creating an environment where people who have invisible disabilities to even share that they have these situations or they have these kind of disabilities so that you can use that to formulate better policies at your workplaces or wherever you are doing DEIA work, right? Not forgetting about cultural competence, right? You really want to make sure that you understand you understand and appreciate the different cultural perspectives of people that come together as your employees or as your team members. You really want to appreciate that so that you'll be able to use that to effectively, communicate and even how you can respect them. Like before you respect someone, you really want to acknowledge where they are coming from. You don't have to look down upon someone just because they have a disability, just because they are black, just because they don't look like you. Let me put it that way. No, that is not how DEI, A should work. And also like it comes from, you will need some form of leadership commitment. So, is it an organization where the leadership proudly gets involved and talks about DEIA work or initiatives, or even to the extent of disclosing their disability if they have something like that, if they have a disability. Because when a leader shares that they have a disability, it encourages so many people that are following them to do the same. And then in that particular workplace, you will begin to appreciate, oh, we are more diverse, not only by race, not only by gender, not only by age, but also by disability, right? You really want to do that. The other thing that I want to add is that people, we need to organizations, wherever you are doing this, whether in a sporting club, a soccer or a football team, let me put it that way for those of you in Europe, like you really want to make sure that you are collecting data on people who have disabilities, as well as you are doing for race and everything. I know a lot of organizations, they do that already. So I will be hammering on employees with disabilities, collect data on employees who have disabilities, and then use that data to inform, the policies, the programs that you would like to roll over like in your organizations so that people will see, oh, we have this number. And then don't only collect that number once, annualize it. Maybe because a lot of people may not be able to disclose that they have disabilities. For the first time, you will start to collect data, right? So you would want to annualize, you want to do it every year. Because when people hear that, oh, we have about 10 people who have disabilities in our organizations. Oh, if they didn't disclose, they may be encouraged to do that when you are doing that next time. So that is one. The last thing that I want to touch on is the power of having employee resource groups. So, for example, at workplaces, like at my job, I am one of the co-chairs of our current diverse abilities employee resource group. And it is amazing. We've been able to achieve a lot. We've been able to collaborate with other ERGs to come up with so many initiatives that individuals who have disabilities, employees who are advocates, they really appreciate that and they are working with us towards a better, workplace, a more inclusive workplace. So that is something that I can say about DEIA work.
Yes, we're adding the A for sure. There's something that and in light of what you just said, there's something that I picked up recently, and that is someone said being non-disabled or being able-bodied, or depending on how you want to phrase it, that's a temporary thing. Everyone in their lives will at some point be disabled. What from your personal perspective and experience, what do you know is true about that?
Exactly, exactly. So what I believe the reason why the person said that could be only one or two reasons. First of all, we know that if you're lucky and you grow older, right? Let's say right from the age of probably 60, 65-ish, and this is like the strongest people, you begin to feel pains probably even all over your body, joints. You may, like when it comes to climbing stairs, it will start being difficult for you. Once you hit like 70, 80, then it compounds, right? So that is where you come in. So for example, if the subway station, the train station that is underground, if you used to run to go down there, or if you used to run up whenever you were getting off, at that age you couldn't do it anymore. You'll be relying more on elevators at these stations in order for you to achieve that. If you live in a building that has like 500 staircases, as a young person, as you are growing older, you will be considering living probably on the first floor or living the building entirely, right? If you can afford, right? So age, like being like older adults or a senior, as we call in the United States, really brings you into the disability community. You can also become a person with disability through an accident, right? People have vehicular accident. People even have just a fall, right? And it depends on where you fell, right? You can identify yourself as an individual with a disability, whether for a short term or sometimes even permanently, right? Which people usually don't want, but that is life. We cannot stop that, right? Thanks for that question. I just want to chip in something that I also forgot when I was talking about DNI. I think the use of disability inclusive or inclusive language is super important. So workplaces, employers, organizations, you really want to look into that. You want to, encourage your folks, really, whether they should use, disability, first, or, the person first way to really sort of like talk about people who have disabilities.
What's your
It's
preference? What's your personal
exactly.
preference?
So these two schools of thought, that none of them is wrong, right? They are all correct. Both of them are correct. People tend to have, their choices. Personally,
What
if you
Yeah,
if
what
you
is your
call me,
answer if I ask you?
exactly. No, if you really, if you call me a disabled person, I'm not gonna be angry. But if I am referencing somebody who has a disability, I will acknowledge the individual first. That is me,
Okay.
right? So I would say that the person who uses a wheelchair, right? Versus saying wheelchair bound. You understand what I mean? I would say that, the person who has hearing disability versus saying the deaf doctor, like those things, right?
Yeah.
I will use it just because of me. I believe that I can, unless I ask the person, which I usually do, I ask the person tells, oh, I'm fine with any of them. So go ahead. Oh, I prefer being referred to as disabled. That is fine with me as well. And then I'll go by that. So it's always good to ask where you are not sure. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
What is a challenge that you are currently facing?
I wouldn't say it's a challenge. I would say it's a process that I'm still going through. If it's a process that I'm still experiencing. It's about taking care of three girls with a disability, right? Like I described my background to all of you listeners, and you know, it's challenging, but I don't see it as challenging because if I see it as a challenge, probably I may not be able to do it to the end. I see it as a process that is shaping me, right? A process that is changing even the way I see things, right? Like raising these three girls, how they make me laugh. In order for me to appreciate it, I would want to make them know that they have a father, they have a parent who really cares about them, who will always be there for them, as long as he continues to live. That is me. So I wouldn't say it's a challenge. It's a process that is gradually changing me, and believe me, I am appreciating it. I'm really enjoying it, and it's been a journey, and I can't wait, to go through it for the next 15, 20 years with these three girls that I have.
How
So
old are they?
so I have a 6-year-old that is Amayeboa, a Ghanaian name. I have 3 years old, who is Ajuata. Even though she's not a twin, she took it directly from my mom, who is a twin. And then Ekwesawa, who is my last daughter. Uh, uh, um, you know, yeah, you can, if you have kids, or folks who have kids, you will understand what I'm talking about. It's really fun. It's life changing. And so I am still learning and going through it, and I just hope in their minds, I am probably, I'll be put in the category of one of the best caretakers or parents or fathers around the world. So thank you. Good question.
You are also creating new teachers who will teach you, but also teach others about disability inclusion. So, Marjolein and myself, we both have kids,
Yeah.
and kids teach us valuable lessons
Yes.
regarding this, regarding the EIA as well.
Yes,
So, thank you.
yes, 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 yes. So they are really shaping the way, so for example, if somebody has a child and the person is at a workplace, I will probably understand some of the accommodations that this person will need. One day I'll be a supervisor very soon. And, I wouldn't wait for somebody who has a child to ask me that, oh, they will need this time in order to be able to take care of their kids and all that. I have to make that upfront. I have to tell them in advance that, hey, feel free to tell me if you have to leave work early to take care of your child, you know, because I'm learning from these kids. So that is a very good point.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
for adding that. Yeah.
Hey, are you ready to rediscover focus, clarity, and resilience so that you can be a stronger change maker for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? I am Marjolein Vlug. I'm a certified coach. And whether you're getting started in DEI or are further along in your journey, I can support you to take your work to the next level. With me as your ally, you can gain clarity on your next initiatives or career goals, make intentional choices, stay accountable to them, deal with the intensity of the work, and create real change. Let's talk. I'd love to learn more about you. Reach out, book a chat.
What is important for you to keep reminding yourself of, both professionally and in your personal life?
Yeah. Oh,
Big question. Whew.
yeah, that question, I was really looking at it. And personally, and I want to take this question in such a way that, your audience will really have it. What can you repeat it up? Can you repeat that? How you put it? Because I think it sounds easier than what I read.
What is important to keep your reminding yourself of?
So I might have mentioned this at the beginning, at the beginning of what, when I was introducing myself. But this time when I'm going to say it and probably add more stories to it, so that people will really understand me very well. And it's that spirit of not giving up, right? So, for example, when I moved to the United States first, New York City first, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, I didn't know how to drive. I didn't even know I would ever drive, right? So I was relying on the public transit program and also the subway system. I enjoyed using the subway system better because it will at least get me to wherever I was going, because there will be no major traffic, vehicle traffic. But if you have been in New York City before, you realize that the subway system is not super accessible. Uh, not completely. Not every stop has an elevator. And so, in doing so, I had to sort of like, you know, motivate myself, just like the way, internal motivation. Let me use that. It's like I had to motivate myself that, there's nobody available who will be carrying me up, down and up those stairs. Whenever I had to use that, I had to climb it by myself. And I've had some people, even clapping whenever they saw me climbing those stairs, which is very, very bad. Inspirational porn, like, why would you clap just because you saw somebody, using two crutches to climb, stairs? And originally I preferred to use wheelchair, but I had to use crutches in order for me to be able to. So, I always reminding myself, as much as I remind myself not to give up, I also remind myself, to be able to adapt, right? Like, no matter what. And I've been adapting throughout my life. I've been adapting throughout my life. If you remember the beginning of my story, my mom used to carry me to school. So through that, I had to adapt. I had to know from there how I'll be surviving, every stage, every other way. Let me tell you a story. Before you could enter Ghana Institute of Journalism at that time, I don't know what it is right now, but you apply a lot, huge number of students are slated for interviews. So you just go and you'll be interviewed just like the way you interview for a job. And I was one that, being interviewed for, to get into the school. And one of the panelists asked me, this school, we don't have elevators in all the buildings. We don't have elevators at all. What will you do? How are you going to survive? You know, and I told the person on that panel directly that once I get in, I would know how to survive. It's either I advocate for myself that a class upstairs is brought down for me to be able to access the class, or the school finds a way to get me up there. And all of them were laughing. About five of them, they were all laughing. You know, I said that because of my ability to adapt. And even those of you who do not have disabilities and you are listening to me, I believe you've been adapting throughout your life. But if you have not been doing that, probably that is something that you need to do, because when you adapt, it really helps you become, like, well accustomed to different environments. And so do that. Maybe the job, the company that you are saying that you will not be able to work with, maybe that is the best place for you to work. All that you need to do is adapt when you get there. So if you have a disability and you are listening to me and you have not been adapting, do that and know you have that strength. Do that, and that will help you get to places.
There's a gentleness in your voice when you just said that, and there's so much power in what you said before. And
Thank you.
there's something I want to say, and suddenly I wonder whether this is an ableist way of saying it. So please help me if that's the case, because I also hear you taking a stand for yourself in a calm and factual way.
Yes, yes. Standing for myself is like, it's been. I think that is what probably I've been doing all my life. So, a perfect example. I was the national public relations officer. In America, we say communications officer, national communications officer, or where you are, of the Ghana Institute, Ghana Society of the Physically Disabled Youth One. I became the PRO after graduating from Ghana Institute of Journalism, and I stood for an election, and I was elected nationally, and that was even part of the reason why I was in Denmark, yeah, and all that. One thing that I always and I was always doing, and I still do, was the fact that I wasn't afraid of talking to people who called themselves leaders at that time. In a respectful way, I never disrespected anybody, but I was always asking for what was right for my people, myself. If I say my people, I was also referring to myself. So for example, there was a gentleman who had graduated from the University of Ghana. I mean, the iconic university in Ghana. if you are from Ghana and you are listening to me, you can attest to that fact. This guy graduated from the University of Ghana with so many A's, like that you can think of. He's a person with a vision disability, a person who is blind. And this person applied for a job in a disability organization in Ghana with a pool of other people who didn't have a disability. And guess what? This person this person applied for a job that the title goes advocacy officer. And can you imagine somebody who was blind and went through all the schools? Even my story, listen to it. It's somebody who was blind, going through all the educational structure to the University of Ghana to graduate with, like, as one of the best students. And this person was coming from the northern part of Ghana. If you are from the northern part of Ghana, you would know the challenges there. Even not right now, way back into time, in the 80s, in the 90s, that was the time this person was born. You will know that this person has crossed so many valleys. This person had crossed so many, like, bridges, like, really waters to get to where he was at that time. And this person was applying for an advocacy officer. And he was told after the interview that he was not qualified because he didn't have the experience. I went straight to them to tell them that you cannot tell me that all the people, I may not know people that you are interviewing for this position, but none of them will have an advocacy experience than what this person has done over the years. Because even crossing a street in Ghana, you would want to ask somebody to really help you because there are no accessible pedestrian signals. Those push buttons that you push and it will help you, or no technology that people who are blind or even still are blind could use to cross the street. This person has been advocating for their life, like, since probably the time they were born, you know. So it's like, whilst I was doing this, I was also doing that for myself too, because one of the things that I was preaching to the leadership of the disability movement in Ghana was the fact that, you know what, in order for us to achieve things, policies that will really help people who have disabilities in Ghana, we have to make sure that the leadership, people who work in our organizations, identify with us, like they look like us. They are people with vision disabilities. They are people who use wheelchairs. They are people who are deaf. They are people who stammer. They are people who are facing the challenges that we are facing because they will understand us better and do the things that we want. I was part of the people who fought for the first Ghana National Disability Act that was passed in 2006. You know, we were even heckling politicians just to make this happen. Why did we have to heckle them? Because, I mean, it was just common sense, just to create an environment where everybody can grow, everybody can drive. But people with disabilities do not have that. Still, the educational system in Ghana is not accessible for individuals with disabilities. I spoke to, I keynoted recently at the University of Ghana, I mean, virtually, and these were some of the things that I was telling the leadership of the university. And also, I'm sure anybody as a leader of Ghana or in Ghana who would listen to me will also hear. So I was trying to say that I was interested in becoming a leader of the disability movement in Ghana one day. I mean, it was so bad that I had to relocate after winning so-called American visa lottery to the United States. But I really wanted to be one of the leaders, like the movement, so that I would be able to, build those collaborations, partnerships with the civil society, and get what will really benefit.
But
As
you're
I'm
doing
talking,
it now. You're doing it on LinkedIn. I see what
definitely,
you're doing as well. And
thank
another
you.
a little aspect that I want to bring in because this podcast is called Global Inclusion in Practice. And yes, I do have some inside information, me being a Ghanaian, but also being different, whether you have a disability, whether you pursue different genders, there are cultures out there that see being different as
Oh,
not as first class. They see you as second class or third class or whatever class. as well. So
Yeah.
I wanted to bring in that aspect as well. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, it's really really bad. I mean, you've heard about. I'm gonna use also, moving forward. I'm gonna use examples that probably all your listeners will, all our listeners will resonate. So, for example, like people were killing those who were, happen to be albinos in some part in Africa. They were killing them just because they look different, right? We have even our own country, Vivian, you and I, Ghana. We've heard some politicians trying to enact laws that will prevent, people who are gay and lesbian and all that. I mean, as a society that is growing, for me, one of the reasons why I don't want to interfere with somebody who identify as a lesbian, as a gay, as whatever, one of the reasons why I would allow people like everybody who identifies with this group grow anyhow, any way they want. It's one, I don't buy food for them to eat. It's two, they don't live in my home. Three, they have the right to be who they are. That is the freedom. That is that is like they have that right to do that. So who are you to say that, okay, I'm a politician, so I have to come up with a law that will not allow these kind of groups to grow or to come up in our country? We as a society, and this one probably I'm speaking directly to those of us from Ghana and in other countries around the world where our brothers and sisters, our friends, who identify with the LGBTQ plus community are struggling. We need to understand this because if you have a religious belief that prevents you from, embracing these individuals, then you are not probably doing the right thing as a religious individual. Because religious individual, you have to embrace people who do not believe in what you believe in. So that is how I wanna put it. Did I answer your question?
Definitely, definitely. More than definitely.
I'm seeing a lot of
Thank you.
energy, determined energy. You have a lot of stories. You've experienced a lot of and seen a lot of stories. You have a lot of inspiration. You have a vision. You're where you are now. Who are you growing into?
Oh, that's a very good question. So, what I'm just going into, yes, like I said earlier, one of the greatest fathers on earth, parents on earth, that for sure. But I wanna, I really wanna become, you know, like somebody who don't only, like, not only a cheerleader for disadvantaged groups, right? Like the LGBTQ plus community, the disability community, people who have been racially discriminated against over the years, you know, women, children. Like I'm not only trying to be like their cheerleader. I'm just trying to like I want to grow up to be a person with all the tools, all the knowledge, you know, so that nobody can try to like convince me, right? So, for example, I really want to pursue a doctorate degree one day, as soon as probably my last child hits like 6 years. I really want to pursue that. I think that will sort of like give me more knowledge. I will try my best to learn more about policies that impact the lives of all these groups that I mentioned earlier. And I will use that to arm myself to really protect the rights of these people. So in the near future, you may not be surprised to see me somewhere in Holland, somewhere in Ghana, somewhere in Uganda, somewhere in Bangladesh, India, somewhere talking to people just to set people who have been indirectly boxed over the years, just set us free, because like I said earlier, you don't buy food for us to eat. You don't pay for our rent. You don't do all those. So why are you worried that, the growth of these individuals? it's not good for society because of your own, you know, I don't want to say myopic, but I just want to say like your own small way of seeing things. We should begin to, look things from the broader macro perspective, and everybody will feel that comfort. So I would want to grow up to be, someone who will sort of like make sure that we are always playing that, or we are always creating that, level playing field for everyone, to drive. That's what I want. That's what I want.
I like where you're heading, and you're definitely a storyteller. So there is something that I would like to ask you because Marjolein spoke about growing into, but I do
Yeah,
want to tap into what do you believe in? What is it that you want to amplify that you haven't amplified yet on this on this within this conversation?
I really wanna. I believe in the abilities, the capabilities, the talents, the skills, the training, the experience of all these groups that I mentioned before, especially those with disabilities, right? So we are in an era where, let's say, a person who is blind applies for a job. As soon as they got to the job interview with a white cane, the white cane changes all the thoughts that the interviewer might have had about that candidate, right? It reduces their chances of getting that job probably to like 20%, right? I would like people who have hiring powers, people, recruiters, and all that, to really believe that the fact that somebody has a disability doesn't mean that they are not able to do the job that you would want them to do. Sometimes all that you need to do is make very small adjustment, what we call reasonable accommodation. And sometimes some people even worry themselves so much that, oh, providing a reasonable accommodation. And first of all, let me put this into context. Reasonable accommodation is not only for people who have disabilities. We all need reasonable accommodations. If you have
Exactly.
kids, you need reasonable accommodation, flexible working hours to be able to take care of your children. If you have, let's say, something else that you need to do in order to make complete income for your family, bring in more money. I'm talking about a second job. Sometimes you need some adjustment in the other job that you have. We call all that reasonable accommodation. So I wanted to put that into context. Now, the fact that you have to provide reasonable accommodation for a person with a disability doesn't mean that it is expensive. Sometimes some reasonable accommodations cost zero money, like it has zero cost for you to do that. For example, bringing a desk to, a level that somebody who uses a wheelchair like me will be able to work. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything. All that you need is something that you will use to probably to cut whatever you need to cut, and then you'll be able to bring it down. All that is all that you need.
Well,
you know,
what I'm thinking, you're saying, oh, people in organizations, you really want them to realize this. And in our case, I also believe that this is an invitation to our listeners to,
yes,
just like you are, and this is a very coachy term, expanding your range and seeing
yes,
where your work intersects with, other pieces of people's identity.
exactly.
Include that in your perspective. This is an invitation for, when you're listening to this and you're thinking, wait, let me start deprogramming my bias around,
Yes,
my awareness of the complete belief in the capabilities of people that also happen to have a disability.
yes,
This is your cue. Start deprogramming. I mean, I'm white. I'm decolonizing. I'm becoming more and more anti-racist if I can help it. I'm deprogramming
yeah,
patriarchy. I'm deprogramming a lot, and this is also a part of the deprogramming and the awareness of. Come on, I believe in the humanity and qualities of people with disabilities as well.
I would also like to
totally
add
agree.
in some countries, Organizations even get grants, get subsidies to the facilitation. So look up your country
Yes.
rules, look at your organization rules, maybe your state rules, if there are grants or subsidies that you can apply for because you need to accommodate a person with a disability, that you can create a win-win-win, right? Because somebody has a disability doesn't mean that they cost you money. No, they can earn you much more money than you can.
And what I was hearing you both say is, there's quick wins here too. So if you're
Yeah,
making your DEI plans, you're creating your strategy, you're looking at these all these things I want to do. Maybe you want to start with the quick wins and start here and there. There's quick wins here too,
Yeah,
and
no, a lot of
there's
countries, a lot of
affordable
that's a very good
solutions
point.
here too. And there's yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. A lot of countries, has some sort of like tax break for like people who hire individuals who have disabilities, right? And so like this is real cash that could get into your organization if you do that. And like Vivian mentioned, there are some grants that you could apply in order to provide somebody with a disability a reasonable accommodation. More and more companies like these tech companies, like Apple and all that, they are, and Microsoft, they are, day in, they are researching and making computers, for example, more accessible. And not sometimes all that
even
you have to get,
games.
yeah, exactly. You know, sometimes all you need to do is probably get into the computer that you already have and then turn something on. And then somebody
One
will be
setting.
able to. Exactly. So we just have it's all about, you know, you first don't change the way you or the thoughts that you had about that job candidates, when you saw their application. Whatever that made you believe in them, let that continue. But focus on more conversations afterwards, how you and that person will be able to work together. Companies, organizations should stop using those AIs that have come recently that they use to hire people. That is rejecting resumes of or CVs of people with disabilities. Companies should stop using that. Go to the back days where people physically read resumes or CVs and invite candidates. And you will be able to hire somebody who could be neurodivergent, but at the end of the day, you being able to understand them, understand the process, being able to be ready because they are coming to change you the way you see things and not for a negative, way, in a positive way, be ready to embrace that. And you would never regret doing that. You'll be inviting more people to your businesses because you highlighted that you hire a person with disability or somebody on your engineering team happen to have a disability and they may have disclosed it. And so you feel free to tell the world. People will come to, do business with your company and it could even have ripple effects. So you have a business advantage if you embrace disability. And not only that, the LGBTQ, people who have been racially disadvantaged, children, and all that. Make sure that you are putting things. I'm not saying you should go and hire children, but let's say if you provide
No, but
clothing,
all this
you
intersects
just
with
have
other sides of people's
exactly, exactly.
identities. In terms of learning, what do you recommend? What are your recommendations for our listeners of things that they could read, watch, listen to? What are your tips?
Okay, great. So I have a couple of sort of like books, and that have really changed the way I talk about or everything that we've been talking about, like race, gender, age, ability, and all that. I have a few podcasts and books that I've been reading, listening to over the years. The first one is Race and Racism, right? I'm gonna talk about like those books. Like there is a book that was authored by Beverly Daniel Tatum. You may have
We'll put it in the
probably.
show notes to make it easier for people to find. Yeah, sure.
No, it's called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in a Cafeteria? It's a very good book. In fact, you really want to look into it. And then there is another one that was authored by Ijeoma Oluo. It's called, So You Want to Talk About Race. It is really, really good. It's like a guide to discussing race and racism. It's really like it fits almost every environment. It gives clear insights into some of the things that you really want to discuss or you really want to see improving or enhancing in your organizations or any environment that you find yourself. The other one, gender, and when it comes to gender and feminism, Roxane Gay from the United States has a book called Bad Feminists. It's really good. It's like a compilation of essays exploring like modern feminism and gender and all like cultural criticism. It's really good. You really enjoy reading that. Do that. And then one from one of my favorite writers from Africa, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Of
We should
course.
all be feminists. Probably you know that book. It's amazing. You read it as soon as you start reading, you just get motivated to read, to read, to read. But not just reading, you learn so much that sometimes you feel like you can't wait to put them into
Yeah,
practice.
I bet you like that because you're a parent too. A parent of
Exactly,
daughters.
exactly. So definitely, that is really also those books are really good. And then when it comes to disability, and inclusion, these are also books that I will, and you know, definitely, there may be some other books that people have, but there is a book by Francis A. Kostler. It's called The Unseen Minority: A Social History of Blindness in the United States. It's a very good book. It tackles like a lot of the issues that individuals who are blind or who have vision disabilities really face in society, but sort of like rebrand it, like take it into a different level in such a way that if you read it, you really be able to understand some of these issues and really be ready to to work with individuals who have vision disability. It's really good. And then a book by my own heroes, Judith Human. You may have heard about Judith Human. Judith Human was an American diplomat, worked under the Obama administration, was a huge disability champion. Global disability rights. She authored a book. We were so happy. We were blessed. She blessed us with a book before she died. And the book is Being Human. That is her last name, Heumann. It says Being Human, an unrepentant memoir of a disability rights activist. It really gives you like really the tool to be an advocate for individuals with disabilities. I mean, disability rights advocates. If you really want to pursue that, which I encourage all of you who are doing DEIA workout. I really encourage you to have these books as well, as much as all the books that I have mentioned. And then, the LGBTQ plus, if you really want to have the perspective on that, don't forget to read a book called Stone Butch Blues by Feinberg. It's a very good book that really explores the experiences of lesbian working class folks in the mid 20th century. You really want to immerse yourself into this book. It will really change the way you see individuals who identify as LGBTQ plus, and it will definitely help your organization. The other book is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar
Ah,
Wilde.
wow.
You know that book?
Yeah.
That is a classic novel. Like you really, once you read that book, you will understand so many things, so many of them: sexuality, identity, societal expectations. You will learn so, and you'll be surprised because like you said, oh, this is really an old author. Just read that.
I'm gonna reread it. I'm inspired. I'm curious what I'll know because
Read
I read
it.
it so long
Yes.
ago, and read it with with today in mind.
Exactly. No, I was
Yeah.
able to put together this list really for this conversation, and I'm not done yet. Please listen. For intersectionality, you would also want to read this bridge. That is the title of the book. This bridge called My Back. Writings by radical women of color, edited by Sherry Moraga and Gloria Anzaldua. It's a collection of essays, poetry, and all that. It's like you will continue to you will reread it, like the way Vivian said she'll be reading a book again. The picture of Dorian Gray. Like you'll be reading it because it keeps you really learning, and you begin to appreciate people around you better when you read books like that. The other book is Sister Outside. Maybe you may have heard about it. They are essays and speeches by Audrey, Lord. Like it is really a good book. You really wanna immerse yourself into sort of like a perspective of a black lesbian feminist. It is amazing. That book, please get into it. Get into it. I hope the way I'm moving my hands is okay. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm, I'm,
yeah. It shows that you really love these books, and I'm taking notes.
No, I'm just and also enjoying the conversation that I'm having because I've been and like I said, I've been speaking to like students in Japan, for example, and other places where like some of these stories are super important because the movement have not started yet. They are still at it's teething stages. And these are some of the things that I so long story short, the last recommendation for the books, inclusive leadership, like if you really want to be a good leader, if you are listening to us today and you're already a leader of a company, organization, a group, listen to this. Read this book, The Inclusion Dividend. You know, Why Investing in Diversity and Inclusion Pays Off by Mark Kaplan and Mason Donovan. Read this book and you will just appreciate DEIA work in your organization. Even if you have not started, you will begin to start. And it's always good for you to start from the leaders. You know, a lot of DEIA work start from the ordinary employees of companies, organizations. Because they request, and if nobody has requested in your organization and you are listening to us today, read this book. You'll be able to learn how you can do that and go and start that. And the people who are following you will be happy you did. The last book is Dare to Lead, Brave Work. You may have heard about it if you are listening to us. This is a book, it basically touches on tough conversations, whole heart. That is actually part of the title of the book. Dare to Lead, Brave Work, Tough Conversations, Whole Heart by Brene Brown. Please try your best to read these books. It will really help. And then the podcast, I want to give you and I think the first podcast
Yeah.
that I'll give you is the Global Inclusion, the one that you are listening to right now. If
Thank you.
I'm sure I got the name correct. If not, please feel free to correct me, Vivian.
Yeah, listen to more
Marjolein.
episodes. Yay!
Okay, yes. So listen, please try your best to listen to platforms like this one, because the conversations that are coming up here, it's like sometimes you may not hear them anywhere. Look at where I am and where they were able to pull me over just to come and have this conversation with you all. It means they are up to something great that in the next few years we may be not be surprised, to hear where this podcast, will take all of us to. So I encourage you
Thank
to
you.
recommend it to even your friends who are not on this, who are not listening to us yet. Please recommend us to everybody, your coworkers, everybody, even people of your companies. Please do your best. The leadership of your organizations, recommend this podcast to them. So that was that. Additionally, I would like to add there's a podcast called Code Switch, right? It's really good. The hosts are Shireen, Marisol, Miraji, and Jeannie Demby. It's an amazing podcast. It's an NPR. one of the popular radio in the United States, like podcast. It's really good. It explores race, ethnicity, and all that. So you'll be able to learn a lot, probably from the United States, but you can definitely replicate or resonate if you are in this world in anywhere. They have some like particular episodes that I would recommend for folks. Like there is one called "A Decade of Watching Black People Die." It is really good. You really want to listen to that. The other one is "What We Don't Say That," right? It's really good, very good. It's all about stereotypes and all that. You really want to listen to that. There's another one called "Why Now, White People." You really want to listen to that as well. It's also it is a very very good podcast that you want to listen to. There is another podcast that is called it's called the I've forgotten the visibility. I will find out more about it. It's quite strange that I don't have it here. I may have.
You can always share the link with us so that we can include it in the show notes, right? No
Exactly,
worries about that.
exactly. No, I think in order for me to be fair to your listeners or to our listeners right now, let me share the podcast. The podcast is called Disability Visibility, right? It is hosted by Alice Wong. Alice Wong is one of my role models. She's a person with a disability. She's proud to say that, so I'm proud to say that to introduce her like that. But this is a podcast that sort of like brings to light, like it brings a whole lot of things that really, will help you if you're really interested in disability justice. It doesn't matter the environment. There are some episodes that I would recommend. One is called Resistance and Hope. It is really good. It discusses the history of disability activism, and then the ongoing fights that we are into right now for our rights and inclusion. So please listen to that. There's another one called Care Work, an interview with Leah Lakshmi, you know, Tiaxna Sama Rasinha. It's really, really good. You really want to listen to that. It will help a lot. And then the last episode that I want to share is disabled writers and storytellers. It is amazing. That gives everything. You will hear so many stories that will change the way you see individuals with disabilities, in this world, in your society, in your community, in your workplace, in your school, in your educational institution. So those schools, especially in developing countries, whether you are in Asia, whether you are in Africa, wherever you find yourself, try your best to read some of these books, listen to some of these podcasts, if not all of them, including the one you are on now again. And you will be able to change lives. You'll be able to put smiles on the faces of so many people.
I can definitely hear that you are passionate about not only about, the A part, but about everything that is connected to DEIA. And given that we are reaching our final question, I want to ask you the
Yay.
following. What is important for others in DEI and DEIA to remember?
Yeah, this was also a question that I was really struggling with. It might sound very easy from all that I've said. I think I will reiterate something that I've said before,
Mhm.
that the color of the skin of an individual, you know, the gender of an individual, the age of an individual, the ability level of an individual doesn't tell you enough of these groups of people. You don't know anything about them. You are just seeing them with your eyes, you know. But if you have been seeing people like that and you think you know everything about them, yeah, I respectfully don't want to say you're wrong. I just want to say that try to know these individuals a little more. Try to talk like myself. If you see me probably as a tourist in the Netherlands, in one of those busy places that you have there, you wouldn't probably think that Edmund has all this knowledge. Like Edmund could even talk like this. You you would probably say that, oh, Edmund is nobody. But the question is, if I were nobody, how come that I was able to afford an air ticket to get to where you saw me? You understand what I mean? Like what I'm trying to say is that our eyes alone, our eyes have been deceiving us over the years, has been making us putting people into unnecessary boxes. Some boxes, some of us are still trying to break. We are trying to get out of it. And still, we have not been able to do that just because of how our eyes deceived some people. So being able to talk to people can change the way you see individuals, the way you see people. Sometimes, like for example, if you ask somebody who worked with me, the person will tell you that Edmund is always wearing a smile. Like, just go to Edmund's cubicle, and you'll be able to survive the day. And that is me because I believe that I take my strength from people, you know. So when I smile, I will see people smiling back at me. And then I absorb that energy. And then I use that energy to carry on throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the years. And then I keep going. So, just being like, just getting to know people can, can, can really help us a lot. And not just helping you, it can be profitable. It can help your business grow. It can help whatever you are doing. you know it can help you hire the right people, the right candidates you need for your organization, not hiring people that you always thought they were good, and then sometimes they happen not to be good. Look, people with disabilities, you can ask anybody. Let few people with disabilities take lunch break, like not that they don't eat during lunch. They do, but a lot of them carry food by themselves, to work. They open it on their tables. They eat right there. Sometimes they eat and work. I do that. Somebody will say it is not healthy, but that is what I think I should do. So I have my food in my own food on my desk, work, and then dinner.
And thank you for this, especially in this podcast and for the people listening here. Yes, it's good to be able to explain to the people this is profitable, this is good for business, and it enriches your perspective, it enriches your life, it enriches other people's lives to go beyond what you see and what you thought. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you,
And
thank you. That's a
thanks for
very
this
good.
beautiful conversation.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk with you today. And I am sure that a lot of people who are listening to us today will be adding A to their word. It will not only be DEI, it will be
Yes,
DIA, because with that, you'll be more successful in what you are doing in this particular area
I'm worried.
in your organizations.
Thank you, Edmund.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. You're warmly invited to pause for a moment and think about what stood out to you from this conversation. Please share this episode with others to inspire them too. Make sure to subscribe to our Substack channel. We'll be back soon with more episodes. Be well, take care, and stay connected.